Welcome back, heroes, and today we have a very new hero reveal. The hero is Silk, a web warrior, and we're going to go through the article real quick. Same thing as usual, popped up TTS, maybe some aspect synergy talk. I would love to keep this as short as the Shuri video, but Silk looks a little bit more complex, so I'm not sure if that's going to happen. Okay. Let's dive right into the identity card. So she's got a pretty standard stat line: 3 recovery, 1 thwart, 2 attack, 3 defense, 10 hit points. So not super paper thin on defense and recovery and health. She's higher than 9, but very low thwarting for sure. Okay, traits wise, she has 2 of the strongest traits in the game: Genius, Web Warrior. They did not give her a champion, which, I don't know, maybe thematically that's a little bit off, but mechanically probably a good idea, just because Miles, also champion, and just between champion and web warrior, he's very strong. Silk would have web warrior, champion, genius. That would be absolutely insane. Genius and web warrior are 2 of the strongest traits in the game. Let's get into her specific mechanics. Her alter ego. If there are more than 4 tucked cards here, discard all but 4 of those cards. So she can tuck above 4, but then you must discard back down to 4. Tucking just means that you take the card and you literally physically tuck it under the identity card. I don't remember if they ruled that it's face up or face down. It'll be in the RRG at some points. They'll put it in her, or maybe it was, maybe we got it in one of the inserts already. But for my purposes, they're always going to be face up because I want to reference them. Action: discard a card tucked here, draw 2 cards. Immediately, insane economy right off the bat. You got 6 hand size and alter ego. You can draw 2 cards on the way down, draw 2 cards on the way up. I think you always want to flip with at least 2 cards tucked under you for this reason. And then her hero side, the same constant ability as her alter ego side, and then she gets the Silk Sense response. After you defeat a minion or side scheme or resolve a treachery card, tuck that card under here from the encounter discard pile. So a couple things here. After you defeat, this means no allies or supports or upgrades attached to other characters. It has to be Silk with her basic powers, her events, her upgrades, and it has to be a minion or a side scheme that she defeats, and it has to be tucked from the encounter discard pile. So no victory cards like player side schemes, nothing that would go back into the encounter deck, nothing that would go back somewhere else other than the encounter discard pile. So it has to enter the discard pile, then she can tuck it from there. After you resolve a treachery card, so if we're going all the way back to wave 5 with things like Spider Tingle, Spider-Man Noir, resolve means that at least one effect on the treachery has to actually go through. So you can't cancel the entire treachery for her to still tuck it. You have to only cancel part of it if you're going to do any kind of cancel. So a lot of cancels say they cancel the when revealed effects only. If all that card has are when revealed effects, you couldn't tuck it. But if it had some other keyword, maybe it had surge, maybe it had insight, something like that, those keywords still resolve even if you cancel the bold when revealed effects. And vice versa. You might cancel a keyword but not the when revealed, this kind of thing. So at least part of it has to resolve. So already we're looking at things that are going to want to bring out stuff that she's going to want to tuck. We want to bring out minions, bring out side schemes, have her resolve treacheries so that she can tuck them, so she can draw more cards in her alter ego. And then we're going to want to build in more ways for her to defeat these things, whether it's big events, big basic powers, whittling stuff down with allies or supports. What she's definitely not going to want to do is actually defeat stuff with her allies and support. She's going to want to defeat it herself. So she's the boss of the situation. Everybody else is just working for her. Going through some of the other cards here, we have a couple upgrades that help with her basic powers, and here's where we get some of the why tucked matters so much for her. Hero Interrupt, weapon, 2 cost. When Silk makes a basic attack, exhaust Spider Claws. For this attack, she gets +1 attack for each tucked card under her from the same encounter set as the attacked enemy. This attack gains piercing. What does encounter set mean? This means the set down here where it says, like a word or a grouping of what that card belongs to. So this card belongs to the Silk set. So encounter sets might be your villain or scenario. So something like Crossbones, say crossbones at the bottom. Claw says claw at the bottom. Modular sets will say like, Masters of Evil, the claw modular set. Standard will say standard. Expert says expert. So the more mod sets that enter the game, the more diluted her abilities are going to be, because you want to tuck a lot of the same cards under her. So I think she's not going to be that good against dealing with mod sets. A lot of mod sets are, very small anyways. To get use out of this tucked claws, you would have to be attacking a minion, obviously, if you're using it on a mod set, and you already had to have seen a card from that mod set already that she's tucked. Could be from another minion or a side scheme or a treachery that she's seen, but you already have to have it tucked. You have to have Spider Claws out, and then you have to see a minion from that mod set. Now, where I think this is really going to be powerful is against the villain. There's definitely going to be, you want a lot of the most threatening cards, besides the standard and expert cards, are the villain's own cards. Typically, most scenarios have, one or two type of scare cards that are like your big threatening cards. If you can just sit on those with Silk, and then you are able to deal with both the villain and the main scheme in many scenarios. Some scenarios, the villains are different from the main scheme set, so you won't be able to double up. But if you just tuck scenario cards, you're going to be getting a boosted attack with Spider Claws, and then I'm going to predict that she's going to get some kind of thwart version of Spider Claws as well. Something that boosts her basic thwart and maybe makes her ignore Crisis or Patrol or whatever they think the, this equivalent of piercing is. Now, one cool thing is that this attack always gains piercing. You don't need to have a matching tucked card here for Spider Claws to gain piercing. So at worst, this is a 2-cost, your basic attacks gain piercing upgrade. So a little bit worse than something like Soul Sword and Magic, that all of her basic attacks gain piercing. It's only a 1-cost, I want to say. And then a lot of times gives you just a flat +1 attack. This, she has a very conditional +1, but she always gets piercing. But yeah, so I think this is where a lot of her decisions are going to come down. Let's go to the events real quick. I'm going to skip ahead. So Spider Claws gives her plus attack. Swing Silk Kick is a aerial attack superpower, 3-cost attack event. Deal 7 damage to an enemy. You may discard a card tucked under Silk from the same encounter set as that enemy. If you do, this attack deals 2 additional damage and gains overkill. So here, with Spider Claws, you leave the card tucked and you get that static boost. Swing Silk Kick, you discard the card and you get a slightly larger boost potentially. Unless you have a lot of those tucked cards and Spider Claws is giving you a better boost, Swing Silk Kick still has a higher initial damage output with that 7. Now, it's not going to stay on the table. You're going to have ways to discount it, Deft Focus, Martial Prowess, anything like that. But I think this is going to be one of the key decisions. Do you stack cards from the same encounter set, or do you try to diversify and go through them as much as you can with your Alter Ego card, with your events that discard your tucked cards? Swing Silk Kick, to me, this looks perfect for, again, dealing with the villain, because it's high initial damage and you're more likely to have a card tucked under you from the villain encounter set, which is much bigger, than from a singular modular encounter set, which is going to be much smaller and less frequent. I'm not sure if the overkill is really this nice here, just because you're still going to have to line up another card tucked under Silk with that minion you're defeating. It's not impossible. She has ways to grab specific cards from the encounter deck, and we'll see that in a second. But I think for the most part, this is going to be a villain. Now, we're getting this wave, a lot of Redux from Core in Wave 1. We saw Shuri Hero as kind of Black Panther Redux, and here we have Swing Silk Kick, kind of like Swing Web Kick. We're going to see a lot of similarities between the Core set Spider-Man, and we'll see, I guess, how far those similarities go in her design. Right now, while this is a very linear take on that old card, this is a fresh new thing. Thinking about the encounter sets, I really like that kind of thing. Are you going to use these events? Are you going to use her upgrades? Are you going to sit on the tucked cards? Are you going to spend the tucked cards? Are you going to go wide with the tucked cards, narrow with the tucked cards? There's a lot of things to think about here. Next, we'll go to her other events. Wall Crawl, Superpower Thwart, 1-cost thwart events, remove 2 threat from a scheme. So 1 for 2, that's already, not a terrible rate. It's only the fact that like most side schemes are going to have at least 3 is where it's going to, fall a little bit. But we do get to choose a scheme. You may discard a card tucked under Silk from the same encounter set as the chosen scheme to remove 3 threat from the chosen scheme. So this is, 1 cost for 5 threat removal, with the caveat that you do have to discard a tucked card. So that tucked card could have been draw 2 from her ability, but if you're defeating a side scheme, then you're going to get that card right back. You're not really net losing any tucked cards. One thing is that this is not going to be very good at clearing player side schemes, because player side schemes don't have any matching encounter set cards. They are aspect cards or basic cards or hero cards. So this is not going to be very good at player side scheme clearing, but I think that's okay because she can't really tuck player side schemes anyways. They don't go to the encounter discard pile. Most of them go to the victory display or your own discard pile. But this leaves her allies with little to do other than set her up to clear stuff. So maybe you use like a 2-thwart Hobie Brown to set up your wall crawl for extra 2 threat, and then you tuck that card. Or Hobie is on player side scheme clearing duty while Silk is taking care of all the encounter cards. So there is an interesting dynamic here with player side schemes where she's not great at clearing them herself, but maybe the fact that she's carried by 2 very powerful traits will help her out a lot here. All right, so those were the 2 events. Let's flip over back to her upgrades. We have Spider Reflexes here. 2-cost superpower, Hero Interrupt. When Silk defends, and she has that nice 3 defense stat if you basic defend with her, she gets +1 defense for each card tucked under her from the same encounter set as the attacking enemy. So again, I think it's unlikely to get a lot of use out of this from minions unless the minions are from the villain encounter set, because that's going to be the biggest encounter set in most of your games. But this seems very good against defending the villain if you have some of those cards tucked. Maybe she gets up to, if you have 4 cards tucked under her, she'll be at 7 defense without any other buffs. Granted, they all have to be from that encounter set, but then this is the thing I really like about this card. After this attack, tuck the top card of the encounter discard pile under Silk. Now, 90% of the time, that's going to be your boost card for that attack. Boost card goes to the discard pile, and then after the attack, you get to tuck that card under Silk. So it's kind of like an extension of her hero ability, which can tuck Treachery as you resolve. Spider Reflexes can kind of tuck the boost cards you resolve. So taking and defending more attacks leads to more tucks. If you're already at your max tucks and you want to tuck a card, you're going to have to like finagle and work around like which cards do you want to keep tucked under you? What are you most likely to see coming up in the encounter deck? If you have like Radioactive Man from the Masters of Evil encounter set and he's coming up in the encounter deck, maybe you want to keep your Masters of Evil tucks so that you have a better chance of one-shotting him or something like that, right? You're going to be definitely tracking what's left in the encounter deck a lot with Silk, and that's something that I do already, so I think that's going to play well into my playstyle. But I think this card is very key for her. This immediately seems more valuable than using Claws with her low 2 attack, and it's an expensive 2-cost upgrade. You might not even get the plus attack boost out of it. This is pretty much always guaranteeing a tuck. I don't think there's any, for the most part, there's not going to be any way for, maybe there's some like very niche situations, but for the most part, the villain is always going to have an encounter deck discard pile after they attack, so you should always be able to tuck something with this card. So guaranteeing 1 tuck, defending, very nice here. Okay, what should we go to next? Let's go to her player side scheme next, which is Get the Scoop. She has a non-victory display player side scheme just like Jubilee, so this is going to come back into your discard pile. Alter Ego action, exhaust your identity, remove 2 threat from here. Any player may trigger this ability. So I don't think that's going to be the move with her a lot of the time. She has this basic power upgrade, basic defense upgrade, basic attack upgrade. She's going to want to use her basic power a lot. She's not going to want to exhaust for this. But the when defeated is very good. The Sydney Moon player looks at the top 2 cards of the encounter deck and tucks 1 of those cards under their identity. So you're going to get to look at the encounter sets and see, what do I have on the board that I need to deal with? Tuck what you are needing the most. That can boost your event. You can discard for your event, discard it for or keep it tucked for your upgrades, this kind of thing. So there's a little bit of matching going on there, set matching. And then you get to leave the other card on top, so you know it's coming. You know what the villain's boost is going to be. If they're status, you know what the encounter card is going to be. You could combo this with like one of the discard from the top of the deck minion tutors to leave, like let's say you see 2 minions. You can tuck the worst minion under you, put the least bad one on top, and then use your looking for trouble to deal that card to yourself, remove 3 threat from the main, this kind of thing. And then you have that other minion there ready to go, ready to also be tucked. You can do this in Alter Ego, which is really nice. And critically, this card and the Reflexes card both can tuck things that are not minions, side schemes, and treacheries. So she seems very designed around dealing with minions, side schemes, and treacheries because that's what her events and her upgrades deal with, but not very good against obligations or attachments or these kind of player cards, and Get the Scoop can remove those from the encounter deck. You don't want to see that anyways. You want to see that treachery get revealed. You want to see that minion get revealed, that side scheme get revealed. If your encounter card for the round is an attachment, well, that kind of sucks because you're not going to be able to get that tuck off of whatever the encounter deck dealt you. So Get the Scoop is a nice way to get those attachment cards or obligation cards out of the encounter deck. We want to keep the defeatable things and the treacheries in the encounter deck cycling through so that she can keep revealing them and tucking them, etc. And then she has this unique support, J. Jonah Jameson. 3 costs, so pretty expensive without build support. Alter Ego action, exhaust this card, search your deck and discard pile for Get the Scoop, and put it into play. So he just tutors her unique player side scheme, which can tutor her tuck card. So there's a little chain reaction here. We use J. Jonah, you get the Scoop, you clear Get the Scoop, you get a tuck. Now she isn't that great at clearing player side schemes, but again, she's going to have allies to help out with this for her. The other action here is that you can just exhaust him, remove 2 threat from a side scheme. So not the main scheme, but can tee up a side scheme. This is also going to be great for player side schemes because she doesn't want to defeat player side schemes, which we've talked about already, and he can even tee up and counter side schemes for her to then defeat with Wall Crawl. You exhaust J. Jonah, you use Wall Crawl as a 1 for 2, and that's going to defeat most encounter side schemes in solo, and she gets that tucked. Okay, I think there is one card we have not talked about yet, and this is maybe her most interesting card to me. 1 cost upgrade, Eidetic Memory, which for most people, this is like photographic memory. And it's a normal interrupt, so not a hero locked interrupt, normal interrupt. When you reveal a card from the same encounter set as a card tucked under your identity, exhaust Eidetic Memory, swap those cards. Reveal the card that had been tucked under Silk instead. Well, that is just lovely, because this can help you, get rid of advance. I would much rather, if I were Silk, reveal Shadows of the Past, assuming her nemesis isn't debilitating, than in advance. I would rather reveal, or in advance and Alter Ego specifically, I'd rather reveal like a Caught Off Guard than in advance and Alter Ego, this kind of thing. And then if she's in hero mode and you did swap a treachery and she reveals this new treachery that had previously been tucked under her, she can just tuck that treachery immediately again because you still revealed it and then you resolve it and you tuck it back. This is going to lead to some, I think, big brain plays where you can, play around the worst card in the encounter deck for your situation by just sitting on a tucked card that matches that encounter set. So I've already talked about how it's going to be really beneficial for her to sit on villain encounter set cards and scenario encounter set cards because she immediately has 2 targets for her boosting effects from Wall Crawl and Swing Web Kick, which is the villain and the main scheme. But a lot of those villain cards, like what's a good one here? Like Avatar of Death from Thanos, right? That's like his attacks you with overkill and piercing or whatever, or he schemes against you. You can play, knowing that you will never see that card because you're going to see whatever card is tucked under you instead. And having that foreknowledge is super powerful, I think, in Marvel Champions. Knowing what the encounter card is going to be. It's almost the same as like scrying, kind of like with her Get the Scoop or Global Logistics or something like that, or like Gambit's Alter Ego, where you're giving yourself an encounter card. And here it's like I can play around whatever card is worst for my situation because I have these tucks. I think this is something that is going to benefit a variety of tucks rather than a narrow and deep tuck line, which I think is only really supported so far from her Spider Claws, which I think is her worst card that we've seen. That's the only card that really rewards her for going narrow and deep, like focusing on stacking from the same encounter set. Eidetic Memory, I think you're going to want a wide variety of encounter cards. Wall Crawl and Swinging Silk Kick, I think you're going to want a wide variety of encounter cards tucked under you from multiple different sets. But yeah, this is a very intriguing card. It is going to have some kind of sequencing issues or card order issues where, like, if you see the worst card before you see the least worst card, the less bad card, then it's not doing that much for you, because it's not like you want to reveal the worst card in exchange for the weaker card you see later. You really want to see that weaker card sooner. So if the villain has minions, which, not every villain has minions, like Absorbing Man, or if it has side schemes, those are probably good cards to reveal in place of like a villain treachery, this kind of thing. Very interesting card. I'm excited that this is included. All right. Before we move on, let's just take a quick side note here about the Web Warrior trait, which in my opinion is the strongest and simultaneously most broken trait in the game, and it really comes down to mostly Web of Life and Destiny being unlimited card draw for all of your allies. Now, they also have 3 of the strongest allies in the game, with Peter Parker always readying you, Ghost Spider tutoring your identity-specific events, and auto-readying your upgrades. Those are 3 very strong effects that Web Warriors get, and those aren't the only strong allies in the traits, but those are the 3 that immediately spring to mind anytime I think of like building for Web Warrior. So it's got to be incredibly difficult to design and balance a Web Warrior card or a Web Warrior hero in the modern card pool, because just having the trait, even with like a blank identity card, is immediately going to be super strong. Like, you don't have to print Silk with an alter ego draw 2 cards. As long as your hero card has Web Warrior, she's going to be super strong no matter what you do. So how do you design a hero where you want to promote playing the hero's card and not necessarily just going into broken Web Warrior strategies, but also having some interesting Web Warrior tech? And that's something I think that, if we're correct, Tony is the designer on this hero. This is something that, like, I'm sure that he's taken into account. And giving Silk this unique, I want to defeat stuff and I'm going to tuck things here, I think is like a really good move in terms of not letting the Web Warrior trait overshadow her. I still think it's going to be like the strongest way to play her for sure, but there's a lot of interplay here with deck building hooks both into her events and into her upgrades that I don't think a lot of the other Web Warriors necessarily have when they're mostly wanting to play their own cards or Web Warrior traded cards. So I don't know, just interesting thought here. How do you design a Web Warrior hero in the card pool where Web of Life and Destiny exists? That's not just going to be Web of Life and Destiny and everything, but this is a very interesting and unique avenue for her to go down with the set matching and the tucking and things like this. So we'll have to see how successful she is at that, but I'm excited that she doesn't look like just completely busted on the surface like Miles is, where like Miles has to have these super strong events because the trait by itself is giving him something really, really powerful on its own. So if you want to play the hero cards and not the trait cards, you have to have strong hero cards. I think Ghost Spider is probably the most successful design of the released Web Warriors, just because she has like the most interesting deck building gimmick, really leaning into what the game is designed around, the interrupt and response thing. That's like very interesting for this game. And she's not necessarily designed around just like playing tons of allies. Now, Silk having incredibly strong economy with her alter ego, maybe she just falls into that trap of like, I'm just going to play allies because I can draw 2 cards every turn. And allies are the best cards and they're pretty expensive, all that usual stuff. And then she gets a discount or a rebate after Web of Life and Destiny discards 1. So you're essentially getting 3 cards to play your 3-cost ally. But we'll have to see. I think it's a good attempt at this design and a real design challenge that I'm sure that the team had to think about some. And that's something interesting that I like about Tony's designs is I really see the thought process behind them. How do we make this strong and unique and appeal to a lot of different player types? And so far, Silk has like some very interesting things that make me very interested to get her to the table. All right, here are the aspect cards for us. So Scarlet Spider, Web Warrior. When another Web Warrior character would take any amount of damage, Scarlet Spider takes that damage instead. And he's got double consequential on his stats. Now, 3 cost, 5 hit point. There isn't a ton of reason to use him over Spider UK. I would say mostly like Spider UK, you don't want to run him in Silk because he might defeat the minion and you want to defeat the minion that he's defending or something. He could set up some damage on a minion for you to defeat, but if he doesn't defeat the minion, then he takes the damage. I'm not sure how much Scarlet Spider is doing in terms of, is this better than just healing your ally or your hero normally? For 3 cost, you could play a med team, and from my SPDR deck, interfacing with the Triforce, med team is very strong in terms of healing, Peter Parker, Spider-Man, Spider-Man Noir, a lot of these heavy hitters that will stick around on the board. Silk doesn't necessarily want a basic recover because she wants to use her boosted basic powers with her upgrades. So maybe, but I think the healing is going to be better more than damage prevention. And then he still actually takes the damage. So you get 5 health for 4 cost here. Maybe he chump blocks 2 attacks, but you could just basic defend with him. He blocks an attack and you do it again. I'm not sure. The best thing here is that like when he's on 1 health, you can direct all the damage to him. It's interesting. The Web Warriors are already so strong and the deck is so tight with how many good basic ones there are. I'm not sure how much I use this one, even over the other protection ones like Miles Morales Spider-Man. But very interesting design. 5 hit point allies don't come around every now and then, worth a play. Stop hitting yourself, 2 cost attack event, hero response. Okay, so now we got Ghost Spider and Art, hero response, right? After you defend against an enemy attack and take no damage, deal damage to that enemy equal to your defense for that attack. So immediately, Nightcrawler has the highest defense in kit, on like static defense, so he gets up to 4 defense in kit, but you have like Ghost Spider can have pretty high defense. Gambit, using natural agility, gets up to like a bajillion defense. Any plus defense cards, upgrades, or events that you play are also going to count towards this because it says defense for that attack. So it's going to look back and see how high was your defense when you were defending. Because you want to go as high as possible, this makes me think it's more of a villain card than a minion defense card. For a minion defense card, I think it's just going to be outright worse than Powerful Punch, because you're not going to want to basic defend a minion. You're going to want to defeat that minion before it hits you in the first place. For villain defense damage, I'm not sure. Like, this is a very fun combo, I think, to get your defense as high as possible. Defend the villain. The villain takes 7 damage for 2 cost. I save the resource or whatever on whatever the exchange rate is there, but it seems like it's very limited in terms of like what you're going to want to target with it. And the one thing that I think is going to hold it back in most cases are boost abilities. There are so many boost abilities that either pull a guard minion into play, and it's an attack, so then you can't play it, or stun you, and then you play it and it just removes your stun instead. So the villain gets the boost ability before you're able to play Stop Hitting Yourself. So you're taking that basic defense before you even know if you're going to be able to play Stop Hitting Yourself, scenario dependent, if they have those kind of boost effects, this kind of thing. Being stopped by stun, being stopped by guard, this definitely makes it slightly worse than something like Repost, where you basic defend and you get 3 damage to the attacker for only 1 cost. And it's not an attack, so it's not blocked by guard, not blocked by stun. But it's definitely like a big combo card that's like, it tickles my brain to see how high can we possibly get this if you add Symbiote Suit and Armored Vest and everything else that gives plus defense, and then you play Natural Agility and you have 20 counters on Gambit, and then you boost this with it by discarding 3 counters or whatever, so you can like boost Stop Hitting Yourself with Gambit's ability. It's just very interesting, but yeah, there's definitely going to be some drawbacks, some feel bad moments where, oh, the boost effect stunned me. like most of Age of Apocalypse encounters have like these boost status effects. It's like, oh, it's done me, and now I can't play this card that I built my entire deck around, and it would have done 20 damage for me, and now I'm sad. Definitely a good reason to build in some status resistance or some kind of like ignore guard thing. You know, Shadowcat, she can ignore guard with her phased, but she's most likely going to leave phased before, because it's a force response, she'll leave phased before this response can happen. Although with her solid form, she can pay for this with solid. I don't know. There's a lot to think about here. Definitely some unique drawbacks. Interesting card to have in the card pool. Talking about it way too long. Okay, next card, Energy Shield, 0 cost, upgrade, item, tech. So tech, obviously we get Repurpose, we get Stark Tower, we get, what's that card, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., is it Leo Fitz or something like that? When attached character would take any amount of damage, spend X energy resources, prevent X of that damage. You know, unfortunately, I think there is, what's the, Simmons? Or not, yeah, Simmons, Gemma Simmons. She generates a mental for tech, if I recall. If she generated an energy, this would be like a nice little combo. For the most part, even though this can attach to any other player character, your identity, it can attach to an ally. For the most part, I think it's going to be worse than First Aid 99% of the time. So once you play it and once you spend 1 energy to save 1 damage, you could have played First Aid and just healed 2, or Med Team and healed 2 for 3 turns running. Not a ton of use here. Repurpose, you're not getting any plus stats because 0 cost. Item, you can search it out with, you know, Shopping Spree, but you can also search Energy Barrier with Shopping Spree. It doesn't cost 0, it saves you something. You're not going to want to exhaust twice to get a 0 cost item card. It's interesting. It can stop consequential damage. It can stop encounter deck damage. All sorts of things. Retaliate. For the most part, if it's Retaliate, I would rather have Sidearm than Energy Shield personally. But interesting. A lot of things can pay for it. Thor's God of Thunder upgrades, Spider-Woman's Finesse upgrades, you know, anything that generates a wild resource. I don't think this is going to be the best resource sink for that, though. We got Advanced Suit in Age of Apocalypse Wave, and I think this is better than that. But still, that wasn't like a great card to begin with, so not sure how widely this is going to see play in the current pool. Dr. Sinclair, 2 cost support, Persona Therapist, Alter Ego action, exhaust Dr. Sinclair, spend a mental resource, heal damage from your Alter Ego equal to your recovery. You may discard 1 status card from your identity. Any player may trigger this ability. So this is going to be a great little sideboard option for Night Nurse. I think one of the better things in terms of Night Nurse is that you may discard the status card. You don't have to discard a status card. Night Nurse, if you use her while you have a tough status, she will discard your tough. Dr. Sinclair does not do that. And she combos really well with a lot of things that increase your recovery power, Symbiote Suit, downtime. What's that one from the specialized training? Or no, that doesn't increase your recovery, that increases your hit points. So never mind, take that back. But Banner's Laboratory in Hulk gives you that extra recovery and generates a mental, so this is a little combo there. Although they're both 2 cost cards, it's kind of a slow combo. You're at least getting some status resilience and some health back with Hulk without having to exhaust, which is very nice. Still more expensive than Night Nurse, so I see her as a good build support target for multiplayer, really. You can put her in your deck if you're going into 3 or 4 player. Someone's going to be running build support. You get her. She benefits the whole table. It's nice to get these benefit the whole table cards that like the X-Men got in Aspect. I think this is super cool, giving protection away to help all players. Now Night Nurse could already do this, but the controlling player has to activate her. Any player can pay the resource cost for Dr. Sinclair to use it on themselves. So very cool just to leave her out, and anytime someone flips, it's possible to use her. All right, ready for a fight. I think this is the most interesting of the protection cards in this pack. It is a 1 cost upgrade. It's a preparation. So we see this very nicely with Nick Fury, with Black Widow, those heroes that really like preparations. It's a requirement. You have to spend a physical to play it, and it's max 1 per player. Interrupt. When an enemy would scheme, discard ready for a fight, change to hero form. That enemy attacks you instead. So it's kind of like a storable version of Colossus's Armor Up that you can use in any hero, although this also changes the attack of any step 4 treacheries. changes the activation type of any step 4 treacheries, which Armor Up does not do. If you play Armor Up on an advance, advance is still happening. If you play Ready for a Fight on an advance, advance is not still happening, you're getting attacked instead. So immediately looking at this card, I think that there are some downsides and some upsides. The downsides are when you use it, you're only getting half of your flip. So you're only getting half of the, you usually get like, when you flip down, you get to use all your alter ego, triggers and whatnot. You get the extra hand size, and then before you flip up, you get to use all your alter ego triggers again. If you use this in the villain phase, you are not going to get your alter ego triggers before you flip up. So if you're running, a bunch of supports that are actions and exhaust stuff, that's like not Moira, which would trigger anyways, but something like your X Mansion or your identity-specific support card, you're not going to get the benefit out of those. So you're going to get the +1 hand size, which covers half of this, and you're only going to get half of that flip down. And unfortunately, it's going to be the first half, which I think is the weaker half of most alter ego flips. The turn you flip down is the weaker half of that flip cycle, because you start with less cards. You start with like typically just 5 cards in hand, so you have less to work with. You're going to have to spend a lot of those before you can flip, because you want to do your hero action stuff. And any cards you draw from your alter ego draw abilities, they might end up being hero cards that you can't play, unlike when you flip up and you draw those cards, you still can flip up and play your hero cards, unlike when you flip down. So when you flip down and draw cards, you really want those cards to be playable in alter ego. So Ready for a Fight, it robs you of that half flip. On the other hand, this does prevent you from losing to advance. You can let that first scheme through, the step 2 scheme, when the villain schemes, and know that if you pull advance, you can discard this card and flip up, and then you don't lose to that advance card. The villain's going to attack you instead. Now, if you're at low health and you have no chumps, the villain is statused, then like you're SOL anyways. But you can at least try to get that second half of the flip by not triggering it on the step 2 villain scheme. You can wait for the step 4 if you flip and reveal advance or some kind of scheme treachery. Now, changing that into attack means that like you're not missing out on your protection triggers when you flipped down. You can flip up and you still get your unflappable, you still get your change of fortune, you still get any defense events that you drew into. If you flip down and you use like that defensive training support to shuffle protection cards back in, and then maybe you draw into those protection cards, you trigger Ready for a Fight, you change the scheme to an attack, and you play all your protection stuff, get all your protection goodies, and hopefully that makes up for the lack of your alter ego triggers. This seems particularly good with like Psylocke is the one that sticks out in my mind. She has her sword can cover the requirements. She can't always flip in stalwart scenarios, so this is very good against stalwart, where confuse is not going to be as good. And when you flip up, you can use your psychic misdirection, take that new attack and direct it into a minion. Anyone who's got stuns but no confuses can use this to flip, and then the villain is going to be stunned instead and not attack you anyways. So kind of helps turn any stuns into a pseudo confuse. There's honestly going to be like a lot of heroes that benefit from half a flip a lot of times, or at least like safety from advance. There's a lot of other ways to get this, and for cheaper, this is like many one-cost protection upgrades, just like a tempo hit. It does nothing when you play it, but it does give you some peace of mind. It's going to be interesting to play around with this. Black Widow, she gets it for free with her gauntlets and her card draw and her alter ego, and then you can flip up and defend with her suit and or defend the attack with the suit. So there's a lot of interesting stuff. It works with practiced plan. You can play it down, practice plan it back to hand, which is going to be great for Fury. Maybe he doesn't want, like, maybe you have a build where he doesn't spend a lot of time in stealth suit and you want to go to real alter ego. This can help you. And then when you flip up, you could flip to stealth suit and add that threat to the stealth suit. If you're in the stealth suit form, you don't have to flip up to assault form. And then you trigger practice plan, and both of those cards are going to trigger secret agent. There's a lot of little sequencing there, I think. So interesting with heroes that like preparations, interesting with heroes that like flips, particularly ones that get a lot out of like a half flip. You can get a lot of tempo out of that. Very cool card in the card pool, and glad we have it. All right, moving on. the basic Web Warrior ally. 3 cost, 2 health is supposed to, I think, keep her in check, but she's a 2 thwart, so still pretty good tempo. And then response, after she enters play, look at the top X cards of the encounter deck, where X is the number of Web Warrior cards you control. So already this counts herself, because she is a Web Warrior. You may discard 1 card looked at this way and put the rest back in any order. So if you have her and Web of Life and Destiny, then you look at 2 cards, discard 1, put 1 back on top. You know what that card is, kind of like Get the Scoop. This is already so strong for Web Warriors, because most of the time you're going to have a Web Warrior hero, you're going to have her, you're going to have Web of Life. That's a minimum of 3 scry. You have a couple more allies out, you're looking at 4 or 5 cards. And you get to global logistics those cards. You get to put them back in any order and discard the one that's worst for you. This is a crazy good card. Already, like 2 health might not even be like a bad thing, because you can just rapid response her, she comes back, and you do it all again. Anything like, I would not chump block with her unless you have regroup or something, just so that you can keep looping her as often as you can. Across the Spider-Verse, rapid response, regroup, chance encounter, any way you have to get her like every single turn, and you're just going to completely control the encounter deck. You know what your boost card's going to be, you know what your encounter card's going to be, and maybe not just that you know them, but that you can set them. And this is like incredibly powerful, attached to a 2 thwart ally who can even chump block for you. She can just completely neuter an encounter phase. So yeah, she's going right alongside the other 3 basic Web Warrior allies as one who I think goes into every single deck, especially because, you know, some of those allies, Peter Parker and Ghost Spider, can't be run in every single Web Warrior. There is no Madam Web hero, so I think Julia Carpenter here is going to go into every Web Warrior hero. Okay, one last card here, or one last player card. 2 cost team up event, investigative journalism, alter ego interrupt. When an enemy would scheme, cancel that activation and confuse that enemy. I'm not sure if we've had alter ego interrupts before. We've had actions, responses. That's something to look into. But when an enemy would scheme, cancel that activation and confuse that enemy. Canceling is always better than a confuse, because the villain is not going to get any activation effects, not going to get anything that happens on their scheme. This is going to be great against Master Mold, because you just cancel it outright. You don't get the minion whatsoever. So this cancels a scheme and cancels a minion for you in that scenario. And then in any non-stalwart enemy, you also get to confuse it. So this is a 3 effective resource, 2 confuse or 2 scheme cancel card, which is very strong. Maybe the strongest team up we've ever seen. And on top of that, it's with a very strong ally, Peter Parker. Now, maybe she has a signature Peter Parker, but there is always basic Peter Parker to fall back on. And this is just very, very strong, because he already likes to stay on the table, so this is going to be great for her. She can get him in all sorts of different ways across the Spider-Verse, call for backup, this kind of thing. But yeah, being able to flip down. I think the only thing is that there might be a hidden effective resource cost. This might actually be closer to 4 effective resources, because most of the time you're not going to know if you draw into it, so you're going to have to hold it in your hand and then flip down. But if you are Cindy Moon, you're getting back anything lost with the draw 2 cards, any Moon Girl triggers, and Peter Parker, you're getting it back with your scientist resource, and again, any Moon Girl triggers, this kind of thing. So you probably have to hold the card, so maybe it's closer to 4 effective resources, but you are getting 2 villain activation cancels out of this entirely. It could also work for minions, so stuff like the Thunderbolts mod. Those are big villainous minions. You can cancel their schemes. They don't get their activation abilities. So very strong card. Slight hidden cost with the extra, and you might have to hold the card, but I think this goes into pretty much every single Cindy Moon deck. Going into Peter Parker, now he doesn't have any natural confuses. I do like this in Peter Parker, but it's only going to work for him in protection unless we get another Silk ally, because the Silk ally is only in protection, at least for solo play. And she's not an ally that likes to stick to the board anyways, so it's going to be a little bit harder for him to pull this off than Silk, but still strong team up. You always have to consider it. All right, let's go into Tabletop Simulator here. I've imported the Silk cards so we can see them. And yeah, this was a little bit tougher to go through the aspect cards. And I thought about maybe just doing it live, but I still did the same thing here where I pull out the cards. So I think her hooks in aggression and justice are so broad because she gets rewarded for her just defeating minions or side schemes, and that's like 90% of what those two aspects do. Any card that says, any event or upgrade that's like rewards you for defeating minions or defeating side schemes is going to have some level of synergy with her. Now, for me, I really like the look of the Spider Reflexes card and always guaranteeing a tuck when you basic defend and using her strongest stat, and then using her allies to maybe set stuff up. So because she is mostly going to be basic defending for me, and I don't like the look of Spider Claws, I think I'm going to lean away from basic attacking and basic thwarting as much for her, and leaning more into events. So giving her more events, whether it's aggression attack events or justice thwart events, I think is going to be the big one. So we're just going to kind of talk about justice and aggression here. I haven't pulled out every single card in these aspects, and particularly because a lot of times I feel like I'm pulling out the same cards in these videos. Generation X, it's good with everybody. Oh, Skilled Investigator, it's good with everybody. I pulled them out again just because I think that these cards are particularly good with Silk, just like they are with every single hero. Skilled Investigator rewards you for defeating side schemes. Card draw. She loves card draw because she has a lot of it already. So you're just going to cycle through her deck super fast. One way or another, we want ways to get more side schemes and minions out of the encounter deck for her to defeat and tuck under herself. So I think one way or another, let's say you have like a really bad minion and you need to get a side scheme from the same encounter effect, or the same encounter set, you one way or another hope you hit that side scheme, and then you boost Spider Claws or swing Silk Kick after you defeat the side scheme, tuck it, and then you hit that minion. Or let's say you have a minion tucked under you, so you know you're going to have a boosted wall crawl if you hit a side scheme from the same encounter set. You one way or another draw some cards, hit wall crawl with your tucked minion, defeat the side scheme you just put out, and you still have you're up in resources and things. Yeah, multitasking. I think clear the area, also always go with these, but multitasking, because she has that genius trait in alter ego, she's going to have easy mental access. 2 and 2 helps her spread her thwart around a little bit more. I think she's going to need more thwarting than like clear the areas, single target. She's going to need to spread it a little bit more because wall crawl is also single target thwarting. Her thwart is only 1, so being able to spread the thwart I think is a little bit better. Chance encounter, get all your busted Web Warrior allies or Moon Girl to your hand all the time, especially because you're defeating so many side schemes. Generation X, it gets you a wall crawl or a swing Silk Kick when you have the matching tucked card under you. So I think this is one way of getting around like the weirdness of getting the order of the tucks right. And then we have the 3 Web Warrior allies here. I don't think Lady Spider is going to be that good for her over most of, like, we just saw Madam Web as a busted basic card to add to her deck. Spider-Woman, because she has that team up that confuses, maybe you get Spider-Woman for a little bit cheap. Paviter, this one's interesting to talk about because we did get the ruling change in 1.6 about how for each works. It says, after Spider-Man enters play, remove 1 threat from a scheme for each Web Warrior card you control. Now, of course, you don't want this to defeat any side schemes because you want Silk to defeat them. It is good to target the main with him. But one thing I'm curious about how he works, which you might need to get a ruling on, is if you can spread this for each. Now, let me go to what I'm talking about here. If we go to the, where is it? The rules reference guide for each says, if an effect with for each requires a target, that effect applies to a single target unless the for each clause includes a choose instruction. And Paviter does not include choose, which means, oh, it's probably a single target. You remove all the threat from the same target. But we did get this ruling recently about Eros. Well, not super recently, back in October. And it says, yes, you can treat Eros' ability as saying, choose a minion and confuse it for each M resource, each mental resource. So Eros does not actually say confuse, or sorry, does not actually say choose, and he has the same wording as Paviter. Let's pull him out and we can see that. So here's Eros. After you play Eros from your hand, confuse a minion for each mental resource you use to pay for him. After Spider-Man enters play, remove 1 threat from a scheme for each Web Warrior card you control. Very similar wording. A scheme, a minion. So does Eros have... Eros has an invisible choose on him, which is what they ruled. Does Paviter have the same one? I think if he does, he's so much better for Silk because he takes a little bit of threat off multiple targets, which is helpful to tee her up. But probably needs a ruling. We'll figure that out. Or if someone can leave a comment and let me know. All right, aggression. There's so many ways you can go in aggression here. I just pulled out a couple cards. Lock and Load, it pulls out your Spider Claws. Not that they're the best card anyways, but I just thought I would point that out. Keep Up the Pressure grabs you your Swing Silk Kick or any other events, helps boost the attack. And then, just like Generation X, helps smooth out the order of draws here. Looking for Trouble, you want to get more minions so you can defeat them and tuck them. It helps you remove threat from the main scheme, which Silk is mostly going to be wanting to thwart side schemes anyways, so that seems like a win-win for her. Hall of Hero, she's going to be defeating a lot of minions, and this is just going to turbocharge her alter ego card draw. Like, can you imagine a turn where you draw 2 from her alter ego, draw 3 from Hall of Heroes, draw another 3 from Moon Girl? You're getting 8 cards right there. Spider Girl, she can stun and confuse a minion until you can draw into your Swing Silk Kick or whatever. Not sure, just threw her in there. I think for the most part, you can do basic attacks and lean into Spider Claws with her. You can do events and focus on basic defending. I think this is really cool in her design, is that you can play her and build for her in seemingly a lot of different ways. Do you want to lean into her upgrades? Do you want to lean into her events? Do you want to try to split the middle? But yeah, that's generally where I'm at with aggression and justice. Look at the cards that reward you for defeating stuff. There's a lot of them. I can't list them all here. But yeah, the main thing I think is you're going to want to add some cards that help get stuff out of the encounter deck so that she can filter through her tucked cards and have a little bit more choice. How much that matters when you just have draw 2 on your alter ego, not sure. Okay, we're going to quickly do the basic cards here. We're going to do the Web Warrior stack last. Now there's a couple allies I pulled out here. Venom, because he has this hazard symbol, so the more cards you're seeing out of the encounter deck is not actually that much of a negative for Silk, I think, especially if you lean into some kind of like card cancels. But with Venom here, you get to see more of those. You get to deal some damage to something, maybe tee it up for Silk. Same with Symbiote Suit. She seems to really have good uses for her basic powers. I mean, good. I don't know. Spider Claws at least gives her piercing, maybe occasionally a +1. Reflexes, she's going to want to be basic defending a lot. Here it's the extra encounter card. She's going to be seeing more minions, more side schemes she can tuck, more treacheries she can tuck, and hopefully no attachments or obligations. But yeah, +1 to each of your basic powers, and you get a +1 hand size, and you double your hit points. Seems like it could be good for her, especially because she might be able to afford it. Hope Summers, she does have a lot of superpower traded cards. I think 2 of her upgrades and 2 of her events are all superpower. Now, she only searches them from the deck, so you're probably better off just running Ghost Spider, even though Hope turns herself into a Web Warrior ally. Ghost Spider is also going to get you your events. I'm not sure if the upgrades are that worth it just to run Hope Summers for, so most of the time I'm just going to be looping Ghost Spider, but I thought I'd bring her up. Cell Phone, interesting I think for multiplayer, because you're going to want to defeat stuff, but someone else is going to want to defeat something, so you can use Cell Phone to defeat something off turn to get that tuck, and maybe that'll lead into some chain reaction where now you can play a boosted Swing Silk Kick and help out another player with like a big minion in front of them or something. I think being able to be so flexible with her basic powers here is pretty nice, especially if she gets that like thwart upgrade that we're theorizing about. Player side schemes, she's not as good at clearing them from her kits, but she does have a very strong trait, of course. So build support helps get either Web of Life and Destiny or a 3-cost J. Jonah Jameson. Superpower training gets you your 2-cost claws, your 2-cost reflexes, your 1-cost eidetic memory. Not sure how much those cards are going to really play into her play style that you need to get see them as early as possible, but still something to point out nonetheless. Specialized training, if you lead into the basic power avenue with like Cell Phone, Specialized Symbiote Suit, getting even more card draw off of it. You get card draw off Symbiote Suit, card draw off Specialized, card draw off Moon Girl, card draw off this, off that. You know, it can, and anything that helps her defeat stuff with her fairly low basic powers is going to help out. And then over here we have some other cards. We have, of course, the Web Warrior support and events and upgrade. Across the Spider-Verse, get more Web Warrior cards. Silk is a pretty rich hero in that you can draw 2, flip up, use those 2 to play across the Spider-Verse, maybe even repeat it, get a lot of allies out, exhaust those allies, exhaust Web of Life and Destiny. Warrior of the Great Web, this might be even better than Symbiote Suit or better than Cell Phone, at least if your basic attacking stuff. Goes great with Spider Claws, boost your basic attack up, and defeat things, tuck those things. Face the past. We haven't seen her Nemesis minion yet, but this is a ready for her. She does have multiple uses out of her basic power. She does like to draw 3 cards, and she does have a way around the don't attack an enemy or don't attack the villain thing, which is that she has overkill through swing silk kick. So she can still deal some damage to the villain as long as she deals it via overkill. And all of her web warrior allies can still attack the villain. So ready, draw 3 cards, and then you can tuck that Nemesis minion. And once your Nemesis minion is tucked, you can defeat the side scheme easier if that comes out, just because of the set matching. You may not want to add your Nemesis minion to the game because that is diluting the encounter deck set matching a little bit, but I think the payoff is going to be very good here. Okay, these are going to be like the alter ego cards I've picked out for her, or sorry, the economy cards I picked out for her. So Avengers Mansion is here just because she gets +2 card draw and alter ego. She's going to get a 8 hand size alter ego hand, which makes playing Avengers Mansion a little bit easier. A lot of good web warrior cards, so team building exercise is going to be great. She has at least 4 to 6 superpower cards, so it's deft focus. Seems fairly strong here. 1 cost card, easy to play. Ingenuity, she uses genius and alter ego. The mental helps a lot with the mental for some of the pre-con cards, but also like playing Moon Girl, playing Peter Parker, Spider-Man, and then Moon Girl, of course, completely nuts economy. You play her in alter ego, you draw 3 cards, you get very flexible stats. In terms of the allies here, we have a bunch of web warrior allies, which are all going to be great for her. Peter helps her ready, helps turn on her team up if she doesn't get in a density specific Peter. And then Ghost Spider gets her events to hand, which can help with the smoothing over some stuff. And then SPDR, this is very good, just teeing Silk up to defeat something, you ping something, you bounce it to hand, you draw a card, Silk defeats it, you tuck it, rinse and repeat. Hobie, really good burst damage against the villain, good thwart, helps with player side schemes, helps tee things up for her. In addition to swinging Silk Kick, this could be a good finisher. Madam Web, we've talked about how strong this card is already. Very, very powerful. Spider-Man, you can ready and upgrade you control. We haven't seen any tech upgrades in her kit, but it can still ready Ingenuity, which is probably going to be your main target. I don't see you like using Spider Claws multiple times in a round, but you absolutely can. If you have 4 tucked cards from the villain set under her, you attack with +4 attack, you play auto, you ready it, you attack with +4 again, and then Scarlet Spider. When you would reveal an encounter card, name a card type, look at that card. If that card is of the name type, deal 1 damage to Scarlet Spider and draw 1 card. So more card draw for her. You can use Get the Scoop to know what you're going to be revealing. You can use Madam Web to know what you're going to be revealing. You can use one way or another to know what you're going to be revealing. So there's a lot of ways to get this trigger off and get that extra card draw. All right, real quick, we're going to take a brief obligatory pool detour. Not much to see here, just the stuff that's already good. So Tic-Tac-Toe and Blackout are upgrades, so that means that they trigger her tuck if you defeat minions or side schemes with them. Not My Responsibility goes hand in hand with her team up card to give her alter ego access. Get Ragey. You can ready Peter Parker to ready yourself. Ready SPDR, bounce her back to hand. Get in front of me, cancels 1 revealed of a treachery. And then you can block with your web warrior ally, draw a card. But you can also block with yourself and tuck a card with her reflexes. And then Stick-to-itiveness, spend a resource and exhaust this card. We get another ready. So very nice. Physical doesn't really like match with her a lot, but does help her with readies. Negasonic Teenage Warhead. Hazard helps her see more cards, deal 2 damage to her, cancel the cards when revealed. So these cards that only cancel the when revealed is very nice, as long as the card still has another effect that you can resolve and tuck the card. Yeah, a lot of synergy here with her kit. Okay, let's move over to protection, which is her pre-con here. There are a lot of protection web warriors already. We got Miles, Noir, UK. I didn't put Silk in here because she can't run herself. Noir, I think, doesn't really synergize with her too well because you don't want to attach cards to Noir, you want to tuck them under Silk itself, so he's out. Spider-Man UK, you don't really want to defeat stuff with him, you want to defeat stuff with Silk, but Miles Morales, pretty good, stun and confuse, but her team up may just be enough confuse, and she may not want the stun with her reflexes, so we'll have to experiment with him. We talked about some of the differences with Dr. Sinclair and Night Nurse already. Mental synergizes with her ingenuity. All right, moving over here to some treachery-based stuff, which I think she can run. Return the favor, reveal treachery, which you're then going to get to tuck, deal 5 damage to the villain. Spider Tingle, you can cancel the one revealed as long as you deal some damage to web warrior character you control. So this, just leaving a Spider Tingle on the board helps cancel anything with the one revealed, but not another effect that you want to resolve so that you can tuck a card. So just make sure that reveal and resolve, not the same thing. When you cancel the reveal, you still have to resolve some of it if you want to tuck it. If the reveal is the whole thing, you won't get the tuck. So kind of scenario dependent on these, but interesting little combo nonetheless. Ready for a fight. She gets a lot of good confuse, plus her scheme cancel through the team up, so not sure about this, but you can flip up and then basic defend and get a card tucked off of reflexes if you want to, but you are giving up that draw 2 if you use this early. Astonishing X-Men, kind of similar to Miles Morales, but you can also stun and confuse minions if you want to keep them around a little bit. Stop hitting yourself, she can get up to pretty high defense. We talked about this already. We talked about Scarlet Spider already. Unflappable, she can get some pretty high defense, so she can usually perfect defense that combos well with Ready for a Fight. Render Medical Aid. This is my stand-in for all of the heal protection cards, particularly heal ally protection cards. Heal your Peter Parker Spider-Man so he can stay out until you see your team up again. Angel's Eerie, she defends a lot, doesn't want to recover, so you flip, you heal all the damage, or at least 1 damage for each time you defended. Seems okay with her. Thwip Thwip. Works great with most web warriors. The stun might go against her playstyle, but it's going to be great against the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. box, being able to stun those vulnerable minions. Hard Knock, she's already rewarded for defeating stuff. Here's another thing that defeats stuff and rewards her. Okay, this 3-card set is going to be pretty interesting. You use Come Get Me Bub to pull a minion that you can tuck. You can ready with anticipation so that you can tuck that minion with like a basic power, and then you can taunt the villain so that you can use up your tough. And if you resolve, if you defend with reflexes in the villain or the hero phase, then you get to draw the 3 cards plus tuck the top card of the encounter deck discard pile. So this does help you out a little bit by taking a little bit more attacks if you didn't trigger reflexes last turn, because maybe the villain was confused from, or sorry, stunned from Spider-Man or stunned from Thwip Thwip. Then we get that card draw here and the tuck. All right, moving on to leadership. Leadership web warrior is already pretty busted. We've known this for years. I think some of the standout cards here are going to be the discard cards. I think these work best with Silk because this one gives her a ready so that you can, it helps boost her basic power so she can defeat more things for herself, so she can tuck more things. Noble Sacrifice helps her heal, and it heals equal to the allies' printed hit points. So some of these allies some of these web warrior allies are up there with like very nice 3 hit points, this kind of thing. Squared Off is going to get you more minions and helps you play your web warrior allies from your hand. So very nice here. More minions for you to tuck, more allies for you to play. Command Team, always great with Peter Parker ally. Regroup, going to be great with the new Madam Web ally and with Squared Off here. MedLab can tuck Peter Parker under it so you can play him alter ego. Make sure you have the team up in hand. R&D Facility, Mentals, goes great with her ingenuity, boosts her basic powers, helps her tuck more things. Mission Leader, reward you for defeating side schemes. Call for backup, gets you Peter Parker into play. So not a lot of specific synergy because I think a lot is intrinsic to her trait and her kit. She wants to be encounter set matching. So you want more things that help her defeat things so that she can tuck them and she can see more things. I think Silk is a very interesting design. And I'm excited to play her, see what her remaining cards are. So yet another good job from Tony and the team. I think we've seen a lot of really interesting designs. Now, not to be too laudatory, I think there are some things that like hold her back just a little bit. Spider Claws, I think, kind of, if you squint, looks like one of SPDR's interfaces, the plus attack one, just like with a harder to hit trigger. Reflexes looks like a spider interface again, but I do like the ability that you can tuck a card with reflexes. Tuck a card from the encounter discard pile when you defend. So you are actively rewarded for defending here. Interesting stuff. Do you chump with your allies to draw the cards? Do you defend with silk to get the tucks? Or do you just use up the allies naturally and get a little bit of both? So interesting design, some pros, some cons, some synergies. Looking forward to seeing how it works out, and have a great day.